And good evening once again. Day 161 of the Biden administration, and the president and his team are now doing a full court press to sell that nearly $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure deal to the American people, who will, after all, be the recipients of it. President traveled to La Crosse, Wisconsin today, a state he narrowly won in 2020, to talk up the plan that he and 21 senators from both parties agreed to just last week.
This is a generational investment to modernize our infrastructure, creating millions of good-paying jobs, investments that only the government has the capacity to make. This bipartisan breakthrough is a great deal for the American people. This is a blue-collar blueprint to rebuild America.
Even as the administration tries to sell now Biden's agenda to voters, it's also trying to navigate opposition from Republicans and, make no mistake, some Democrats. While many moderate Democrats are raising concerns about the infrastructure plan's price tag, those on the left insist it must be passed with a much larger spending bill. Some of them say they're ready to make that happen without Republican votes.
The priorities that we as Democrats have campaigned on around child care and the care economy, around health care and Medicare expansion, around bold climate action. These are all critical priorities for us. And so we need to make sure that the reconciliation package has 50 votes in the Senate.
When you don't get things that are important to the American people, when things just stop, then there are times that you just have to stand up and say, this has to get done.
Jonathan, I'd like to begin with you. For those in our audience who may be curious what the people are going to see, what the states are going to get, those who haven't followed every twist and turn of the negotiations. If the vote tonight passed on infrastructure, how would that differ from the president's original big wish list?
Well, Brian, it certainly would still be a substantial impact to Americans and their lives, though not as sizable as the president first wanted. Let's recall his first proposal for the hard infrastructure program. That's things like bridges, roads, highways, airports, broadband, was about $2 trillion. Now we're in the neighborhood of about $1 trillion. Still an increase of hundreds of billions from where the Republicans were at the start of this process. And it's been a lot of twists and turns in recent days. And we certainly saw that the deal was agreed to on Thursday. We heard the president come out and tout it and said, we've got Republican support. We know how important it has been for this president to reach across the aisle. He campaigned on being a bipartisan deal maker, only to almost blow it when he so explicitly linked that the hard infrastructure bipartisan deal with the much bigger soft infrastructure that's going to be done through the budget process known as reconciliation, which could be up to $4 trillion, which will probably be Democrats alone. To be clear, this was always going to be on two tracks, but Republicans, when they heard the explicit link with the president threatening to walk away from the bipartisan deal if he couldn't get both, they objected. Damage control from the White House. They seem to have appeased those Republicans for now, but they still have some Democrats, mind you, some progressives who say that they are settling for not nearly enough, that they want to go bigger. But the president today hit the road, where it's the beginning of going to be a series of stops crisscrossing the country, selling the virtues of this bill, selling to Americans that, hey, roads need to be fixed, airports need to be improved. We need to be able to show that we can compete with nations like China when it comes to infrastructure. He called it a generational challenge. That tour started today in Wisconsin.
Since we were talking about the job Chuck Schumer has, and I think a lot of people who perhaps don't follow politics that closely have been surprised at how tough it is. All they heard was Democrats are going to have a voting majority in the Senate. How tough it is to keep the caucus together. Did people see this coming? After the victory, 2 seats in Georgia, there was so much celebration. Did they see the struggle for seats from Arizona and West Virginia, who already happen to have D's after their name?
Well, it's not quite as tough as it's been for me to keep my Wi-Fi signal tonight, but it's pretty close. Look, these are divides that the party had throughout the primary. I think President Biden got a bit of a reprieve on them, in the first 100 days, the first couple months of his administration, because there was this sense of crisis that Democrats felt they just had to get economic relief. They had to get public health measures. They had to sort of make real progress on the pandemic. We're sort of past that acute moment of crisis. And now I think the party is sort of hashing out these differences that were really on display throughout the entire campaign. And part of the issue here is, as you alluded to, they have really thin margins. Sure, Democrats have majorities in the House and the Senate, but unless they keep every single Democrat in lockstep in the Senate, they will not pass that big bill that they want to pass. And it has to be done by this reconciliation, which is, a specialized kind of legislative maneuver. And they really can only afford to lose 3 or 4 votes in the House. So that makes this a really fragile, high, delicate balancing act for Biden as he sort of works to keep both sides of this party on board. And of course, progressives think the plan is too small. A lot of moderates think it's too big. And, Biden is someone who knows these dynamics really well. He's someone that spent most of his career in the Senate, who really prides himself as a deal maker, as someone who's very comfortable with legislative wrangling. I think those Senate bona fides are really going to be put to the test in the next couple of weeks here.